In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make 6 super simple, fun projects from these. But first you need to know how to break down the cans into the 4 parts that I use most often: the sides, the bottom, the ring, and the tab. If you're not familiar with how to break down the cans into these 4 parts, I will link a couple of video tutorials, one on how I break down the cans and the second one on 3 different ways to flatten the cans, and you can check those out in the description box. For this first project, I'm going to be using 2 full cans, the plastic rings from a 6-pack, some Loctite mounting putty, a small command strip, and my draft top can opener. So the first thing I want to do is remove the pull tabs, and I'll save those for a different project, and then I'm going to use my draft top to remove the tops of both of the cans. This tool is very easy to use. It has 2 handles, and you just grip the top of the can so that it holds the can, and then you just turn the can a full 360 degrees and you have a nice clean cut on the top of your can. The next thing I want to do is take my plastic rings, and I'm just going to cut off 2 of the rings. And then I need to put the plastic rings back onto the cans. And this can be a little bit tricky, but if you're kind of pull gently, you want to hold the top of the can so that you're not bending in the sides of the can. You should be able to get the rings back onto the cans. And once you get them put together, you can have turn them to make the proper side go out. And then all you need to do is attach your command strip to the wall, hang up your cans, and secure the bottom with some of the mounting putty. I've used these cans to organize pencils, paintbrushes, and all kinds of tools, and they're also the perfect size for your rolled Cricut vinyl. For this next project, I'm going to be using 15 pull tabs, a key ring, a large jump ring. This is 10 millimeters, and you want something at least that big. I've got some scissor tin snips, a couple of pair of needle nose pliers, and then I'm just going to put a little charm on mine. I made these out of bottle caps, and if you're interested in that video, I will link to that one as well. But you can just find any little kind of charm to put on the end of your keychain. To start this project, I'm going to take 10 of my pull tabs and my tin snips, and I want to cut a little slit in the smaller ring of the pull tab. So I have the side that was hooked to the can and the other side that you pull up, and I want to cut that smaller end, and I want to cut it a little bit off center so that I have a longer side and a shorter side once the piece is cut. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut the other 9 pieces like this. And next I'm going to take one of my pull tabs that I did not cut and one that I did cut, and I'm just going to slide or snap the rings together by pushing the slit into the ring. And you'll notice that I have the small end hooked to the larger end, and I want to be sure to do that on all of them. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to take the rest of my pull tabs that I did not cut, and I'm going to slide them into this ring the same way. So now I have 2 rings hooked together to this one. And the only thing you want to be careful about is that since the pull tabs have a non-finished side and a finished side, I'm going to be putting 5 rings together, or 5 pull tabs together, so I want to make sure that I have a smooth finish on the outside pull tab. So I just want to make sure I have it turned the correct way. So the middle pull tabs you don't have to worry about. So I'm just going to snap those on there. And now I'm putting the last one on, so I just want to make sure that I'm getting the smooth side facing out. So now you can see I have 5 pull tabs hooked to this one pull tab, and I've got a smooth surface on both sides. So next I'm going to let my single pull tab just kind of drop out of the way. And I'm going to take my next pull tab with a slit in it, and I'm going to just take the first pull tab and kind of snap the 2 pieces together through that slit. Then I'm going to let the next piece come over, snap it through, let the next piece come over, snap it through, until I have all 5 tabs hooked together through the second pull tab in the second link of the chain. So here's what that looks like. And then I'm going to take the next pull tab, and I'm going to let my 2 pull tabs kind of drop out of the way. And again, I'm just going to snap the slit portion of the pull tab through the ring. And then through the next one. Through the third tab. Through the fourth tab. And the fifth tab. So now I have 5 tabs hooked to 3 tabs. I'm going to take my 4th tab, just repeating that process. So now I've got 5 tabs and 4 tabs, and on this side you'll notice that I have an unfinished edge, so I want to be sure that on my 5th tab that I'm putting on here, I'm going to have the smooth side out. So I'm going to line everything up and just start snapping the cut slit through all of the rings. This is why you want the one side longer than the other, because you want to be able to kind of slide the tabs out of the way so that you can line the pieces up when you're ready to snap them together. So now I've got 2 completed links of chain, and I want to go ahead and I'm going to take my next 5 pieces and just hook them on the same way. So I always want to make sure that I'm hooking sort of the opposite ends together. So the smaller circle is the one that's cut, and I'm going to always feed that through the larger circle that was hooked to the can. So I'm just going to take the first tab again, snap the pull tab on, and then just continue feeding them through. I've seen people make these chains with just 3 links or 3 pieces of pull tabs, and you can certainly do that if you want to. I think it looks a little better if it's heavier, and 5 is about the max that you can get together. And I think it also holds everything better because you've got cuts in your tabs here, but when you've got 5 hooked together, it makes a nice sturdy chain. But you can do it with just 3 tabs if that's easier for you. So now that I've got this 3-link chain done, you can certainly add more links if you want to. I think 3 is a pretty good length for a keychain. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my key ring on the end that was attached to the aluminum can. And then I just want to take my 10mm jump ring and I'm going to hook it through the other end. Grab it with my needle nose pliers and attach my charm. And then I'll just use my other needle nose pliers to close off this jump ring. And I've got a little pull tab keychain ready for some keys. For project number 3, I'm going to be using 2 can rings, some metal tape, a little bit of cording, some glue dots, and a photograph. So the first thing you want to do is select a photograph that fits inside of this little ring because we're going to be using that as a frame. So I'm going to be using this portion of my photo. And so I want to start with my glue dots. And these are fairly large glue dots. So I'm just going to take the glue dot and kind of stretch it out. And what I want to do is on these can rings, there's the portion that's the top, which is the rim that you drink out of, and then there's the portion that's hooked to the metal, and it's still pretty rough. So I want to attach the glue dot to the rough side of the ring, and I want to keep the majority of the glue dot kind of on the outside of the ring. And I'm not going to worry about putting it all the way around. I'm just going to kind of put it on 2 sides. And I'm just doing this to hold the photo while I'm cutting it out, just to keep it from sliding around and make so that I can make sure I'm getting it the right shape. So these glue dots are great for reshaping, and I've just got a little bit on both sides here, and I'm just going to take my ring and line up my photo. When I get it where I want it, I'm just going to press that glue down. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut out my photo, and I want to leave about 1/8 of an inch, or just the width of the can ring itself. And then I'm going to take my second ring and I'm going to apply a couple of glue dots to it as well. Just stretching them out and putting them along that rough first side. And next I want to go ahead and line up my rings. And once you have it lined up, you can go ahead and press the glue dots down to your photo. So now that I've got my 2 rings together, I want to go back in and really trim back all of this paper. So you just want to trim down the paper as close to the edge as you can get it. And next I want to take a piece of my metal tape, and I need a piece that's long enough to go all the way around the tape. So I'm going to cut a little bit extra length there. And I need a piece that's about 1/4 inch wide. Now this tape has paper backing, so you can measure and draw lines on it if you want to. I usually just am kind of lazy and eyeball things, but you certainly can draw on lines and measure and cut this tape to whatever width you need. And then I'm going to take a little piece of cording, about 8 inches or so, and I just want to tie a loop in it. And then I'll trim off the tails so they're about 1 inch long. And I just want to take my loop and I want to put the knot right at the top of my picture. I'm going to start my tape here. I like to peel a little bit of the paper back and then leave the rest of it on. It's just easier to work with that way. And then I'm going to take my knot, like I said, and put it right at the top of my picture. And I want one tail to go down one side and the other tail to go to the other side. So I'm going to hold the knot with my thumb right in the center at the top, and then I'll take my tape and place it right at the knot. And then I can just make sure that the tail gets caught in the tape as I'm working my way around, and I'm just going to peel back a little bit of tape at a time and lay it along the 2 pieces of can rim, and occasionally you might want to squeeze them together just to make sure that they're going to hang on to that photo. And when I get back to this end, I want to make sure that I catch this other tail in the tape. So I'm going to go ahead and lay it down on the can rims, between the can rims, and go ahead and lay the tape down. And if you need to, you can trim off a little bit of the tape. I have a pretty good length here. I'm just going to let it kind of mold and wrap around the knot there. And then you can take the back of your scissors. If you have an embossing tool, you can use that. You want something that's kind of flat and smooth just to burnish the tape. I like to use my embossing tool. It's just a nice round smooth tool that helps to just press that tape in place and make sure that everything's gonna stay together and that you have a nicer finish to the tape. And when you're done, you have a tiny little framed photo. And you could also make these double-sided and make them into little Christmas ornaments, or put a little heavier back on them and make them into refrigerator magnets. There's just a lot of fun little picture frame options that you can make with these rings. If you've seen any of my recent videos, you know I've been having a lot of fun making the projects with these little soda can tiles. And today I have another object that I'm going to put them on. I found an old tennis ball in our yard, and I'm just decided to cover it to make a more decorative ball. To make the soda can tiles, all you need is some pre-cut mounting tape from Dollar Tree and some flattened sheets of aluminum. You can use full sheets or scraps if you do a lot of crafting with aluminum cans. Then you can just peel the back of the tiles and stick the tiles to whatever your heart desires. The tiles are easy to trim down if you need to reshape them, and they're flexible so they will bend and reshape to whatever you're sticking them to. Once I have the ball completely covered, I'm finishing the edges with some silver tulip metallic dimensional paint. It's very easy to use this paint. It's got a pointed tip, and you just squeeze the bottle gently and draw with it like a pen or pencil. For project number 5, I'm using my metal tape again. A pair of scissors, you need a ruler, an embossing tool. I got this one at the Dollar Tree, so they're very affordable. You need a glue stick, a little piece of cording. You're going to want a hole punch. You can use a regular hole punch. I'm going to be using this punch that has a little rectangular shape in it, but you can use any small punch that you would like that will make a small hole. I have 1 sheet of flattened aluminum. I've gone ahead and made a paper template. You can make your template any size you want, but I'm using a 6" by 2.5" piece of paper to make my template. And then you also need an embossing pad. I just have an old mouse pad here. It just has a little bit of give in it. You could also use a folded t-shirt, anything that will let you press the embossing tool into it a little bit to make the indentation into the metal. The first step is to cut out the bookmark shape, and to do that I'm going to use my glue stick and the paper template, and I just want to add a little bit of the glue, just enough to hold the template onto the metal. Now you could mark your metal and cut it out that way. I just think this is the fastest, easiest way. So I just put a couple little dabs of glue on there, and now I'm going to just attach that to the back side of the aluminum, and I'm going to use a regular pair of scissors just to cut out my shape. Here's a perfect example of how you could have some extra scrap pieces left to make the aluminum can tiles. You can see that I've got some pretty large pieces left here. So I would set these aside and save them for another project. And then when you're finished, you should just be able to pull this paper template right off. For the next step, I'm going to be using my embossing pad. And I want to start working on the printed side of my aluminum. And I'm just going to be making a border all the way around the edge. So I'm going to take my ruler, and I want this border to be 1/4 inch all the way around. So I'm going to line up my ruler. And because I want the border to go all the way around, I don't want to emboss all the way to the edge. I'm going to start at about 1/4 inch in and stop at 1/4 inch away from the edge. And I'm going to use the really small point of my embossing tool. I want to hold the ruler firmly and just press firmly and draw right along that edge. And then I'll repeat that process on the other side. You don't want to press super hard, but you want to press nice and firmly and just draw a nice smooth line. And now I'm going to finish my lines on the short end of my bookmark. So again, I'm going to line it up at 1/4 inch, and then I'm just going to close off the 2 lines that I drew previously. So you can see I've got a little border all the way around. And I like to reinforce this line, but to do that I'm going to switch to a hard surface. So I'm going to move my pad out of the way, and then I'm going to go back with my small tip And I'm just going to draw right along the edge of the line, not on top of it, but just right to the outside edge of this line that I just drew. And you want to just kind of carefully do this freehand, just following that embossed line. And one of the things about hand embossing is that it is kind of, you know, it's not perfect. You're doing hand-drawn things and your embossing tool can slip here and there. So it is sort of an more organic looking than a perfectly stamped out image when you're done. But you do want to make your lines as smooth as possible when you're doing this outside edge here. And now for the fun part. You can use a paper template if you want to actually draw and trace an image here. I like to do what I call doodle embossing. So I just start by drawing some shapes and squiggly lines on the back side, and then I'll flip it over and I'll reinforce it on the other side. And you can switch back and forth between your soft pad and your hard surface. You can kind of just experiment. If you want to make a deeper impression, and you can rework places that you've gone over before, you can use the small tip and then go back over these with the larger tip to make it a wider impression. And if you want to, the deeper you want the impression to be, the more you're going to work on the soft side. But when you go back to reinforce the design on the opposite side, you want to switch to your hard surface and again just be tracing around that outside edge of your design. So this takes a little bit of time. It's kind of a nice relaxing activity. So just have fun with it and experiment, and don't worry too much. If you're doing the doodle embossing, don't worry too much about what the design looks like. Just enjoy the process as you're working along with the metal. One last thing to note is that you do want to emboss on both sides. If you're just working on one side, your piece will definitely start to curl up. But if you work on both sides, you'll be flattening the design back out. I've cut a piece of my metal tape about the length of my bookmark here, and I went ahead and marked the back of it at 5/8 of an inch wide. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut that with my scissors. And I'm going to start on the short ends of my bookmark. If you want to, if you're worried about these pointed ends, you can kind of trim them off a little bit. I don't really worry about it. I'm going to be covering it with tape, so I'm not worried about the pointed edges, but if you are, you can kind of try to round those off with your scissors. And I'm just going to peel back a little bit of my metal tape. And I want to line the tape up with the edge of the metal, and I'm going to run the tape right along my embossed line. So I can just peel back as much of the paper from the tape as I need to and line that up. And then I can just trim off the excess tape. And then I'm going to take my tape and just wrap it around that edge and stick it to the back of this piece of aluminum. And you can smooth it out with your thumbnail or with a burnishing tool if you have one. So I'm going to go ahead and add a piece of tape the same way to my other short end. And then I'll add the tape to the long sides the same way. You could leave the back unfinished if you want to, but I'm going to go ahead and put another piece of tape on the back just to cover the whole thing and make the whole thing silver. And then I'm going to use my rectangular punch to punch a hole to run a cord through. And just for fun, I added some of my aluminum can rolled beads to the tassels. If you haven't seen my bead rolling tutorial, I will link to that in the description as well. For this final project, I'm going to be using the bottom domed piece of the can. I got a fairly long nail here, a brown Sharpie, one wine cork, some white dimensional paint, red paint, and just regular white acrylic paint, some paint brushes, a hammer, my E6000 glue, my metal tape, a small piece of foil, and my scissors. And the first step is just to get the nail into the cork. You might be able to push it in if your nail is small enough. I'm going to end up using my hammer to tap it in about a ½ inch. So I want a fair amount sticking out, and I want to make sure that it's in there pretty solidly. And then I'm going to take my E6000 glue and just attach the domed portion to my wine cork. And then I'm just going to let that glue set up. So I'm going to switch to this one because the glue's had time to cure. And next I want to take my little piece of foil. It's just about a 6-inch piece of foil. And I'm going to kind of scrunch it into a circle and then into kind of a domed shape. And I want it to fit on top of my aluminum piece. You can kind of make this as tall or as squishy, flat as you want to. You're just sort of molding the mushroom top. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be kind of pointed or rounded, however you want to shape it. You do want to make sure that your aluminum is fairly well compressed so that it's not going to smash once the piece is completed. And then I'm just going to take about a ½ inch piece of tape, and I'm going to attach the aluminum foil to my aluminum and cork piece. So I'm just going to set it where I want it and then attach the tape to the underside of the can bottom and just run it across the top and tuck it in on the other side. You can kind of reshape it along the way if you want to a little bit. And then I'm just going to take this second piece and cross it going the opposite direction. So I kind of have a crisscrossed piece holding my foil on. And I just want to press that tape into the foil and the aluminum. And then I'm going to cut 4 pieces that are sort of pie shaped and just fill in to cover the edge of the aluminum and the rest of the foil. So once all the tape's on, you should have the entire bottom edge of this aluminum piece covered because that's the raw edge. So you want to make sure all of that's covered with tape. And all of the aluminum should be covered as well. And you should have a funny little dome shape on the top. And the next thing I want to do is I'm going to take my red and white acrylic paint, and I'm going to add a little color to my mushroom here. And then I'm going to let that dry as well. And now that my paint's dry, I'm going to try to just kind of add a little bit of dimension with my brown marker here. And then I'm going to use my white dimensional paint to finish off the top of the mushroom. And I'm going to let that dry. The final step for this is to add a coat of the Mod Podge. And I just like this super gloss because it's a little extra thick. It puts a little thicker finish on and it just doesn't drip like regular Mod Podge. So when I'm using it for a sealing coat, I really like to use this product instead of the regular Mod Podge, but you could use either one. And you don't have to use the shiny finish, but I like to make things glossy, so I always tend to end up putting some gloss finish on my pieces. So once this is coated, I'm going to let this dry, and I think it's made a cute little complement to my tiny ant sculpture that's also made from an aluminum can. If you'd like to see that tutorial, I will link to that one as well. So be sure to check all the additional resources in the description box. There's a place to sign up to receive the Upcycle Design Lab newsletter if you'd like to never miss one of my projects. Also, I'd love to have you join my YouTube community by clicking that subscribe button. There are also some additional upcycling tutorials in the links below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you back here soon in the lab for my next experiment.